We saw during the COVID peak that edutech became a way of being for all of us. It became a way of delivering content in education, because education is much more than content. It is the interaction between the student and the teacher. But edutech and companies like TimesPro played their own part in making sure that the new skills that are needed for a post-corona world, and a lot has changed, are imparted. So let me welcome Mr. Srikrishna to the Future of Management Education Conclave. And let me start by asking him, what has changed in the last 32, 36 months in terms of the business landscape, in terms of what are the skills needed, and how you at TimesPro are trying to make sure you make a play there and contribute.
So firstly, thank you so much for having me here. It's a privilege to be with you and with all of the assembled dignitaries here. I think it's a fantastic event, so congratulations on putting it together. You're right in saying that Corona has been a game changer as far as EdTech is concerned. And we at TimesPro, part of the Times of India Group's legacy in education, we've been at the forefront of what we call the Edtech movement, the higher education technology movement. It started with a vision of saying we have one of the largest underserved population in higher education in the country. And we try to solve for two very simple but very big issues, which is affordability and access. So we looked at the challenges of higher education in the country. We looked at how private education can solve for some of them. So when we set up TimesPro 10 years ago, it was pre-EdTech. We didn't have, the fancy technologies that we have today. We didn't have the fancy jargon that we have today. But we started with the simple premise of saying, if 60-70% of our graduates are unemployable, how can we solve for that problem? So we looked at various high employability sectors, high density sectors in the country. And we looked at how we can provide solutions for graduates and for industry to meet that supply-demand gap that they were experiencing. That then transformed with the advent of technology into a solution set for working professionals, for management professionals, for technology professionals. So we are one of those few companies which transformed from being an education service provider to industry, academia, and learner into an EdTech service provider. So we're one of those people who started with an education DNA and have gone into a technology DNA.
So what are the skills? You're in the higher edutech space, as you said, EdTech. What are the offerings that you have, and how do they match with what is needed in the marketplace? What are the skills? Some skills and hence your offerings pre-COVID are still relevant. But what have you added in the last 30 months, 33, 36 months?
Absolutely. I was coming to that. So what's happened in our view over the last 3 years, during and post-COVID, is that the world, which was already a VUCA world, has now become a hyper-VUCA world. And you are seeing a greater, invasion of technology into every stream of life. You spoke about the need for soft skills, and you spoke about the need for people to have better personalities. I think a lot of this has been transformed through communication technology and through the invasion of technology into management. And I think the confluence of technology and management, the interface between technology and management is a huge topic. So today there are more IIMs offering courses in AI and ML than there are IITs. And that's the kind of transformation that we have seen. But more fundamentally, more viscerally, I think you will see transformation in the learner. And the learner is today perhaps responding to the events around the globe, around himself, around his markets. And he is now seeking a far more robust and a far more flexible curriculum that can help him add value, not in the next 10 years, but tomorrow. And that learner is now driving a lot of the thinking that EdTech companies are putting into it. So when we partner with many of the luminaries in the room, we actually bring back a lot of feedback from our learners. We bring back what learners are thinking. And I think that's a big task that as a head tech company, we've been able to achieve. We've been able to bridge that learner academia gap. To a certain extent, we've been able to bridge the industry academia gap because we are at the confluence of the employer, learner, academic interface. And we are looking to solve problems of both employability fundamentally and underemployability within working professional segment. So I think those are the interesting themes that we've been working
And give us some data points or case studies or insights, whatever you want to call it, from your partnership with leading B schools. What is working and what can be better?
So we've partnered with a number of V schools. I don't want to get into who and what, but I think what we've brought to the table is a fundamental understanding of the learner, a fundamental ability to manage the learner expectations and aspirations. And because of that, we've been able to add massive value to the programs that the institutes themselves are offering, especially in the online mode. So take a pre-COVID scenario where many of the institutes insisted that your learners have to come to a physical learning center. During the COVID, there was no option of a physical learning center, and post-COVID, there is no thought of going back to a physical learning center. So today, what was considered an uncomfortable situation where you have to teach a completely online learner is now proving to be the most convenient truth. As long as you have a great learning experience platform, as long as you're able to fulfill outcomes for these learners, you're able to really deliver value. So with every one of our IIM partners, we've been able to demonstrate double-digit growth. So one of the early partners that we had was running an online degree program, an online MBA degree program. We were able to, in year one, double the intake as well as double the fee point. And that's a partner that has been with us now for 7 years. And each year we have surprised them on the upside with the kind of quality and the volume of students that we've taken up. We're looking at bringing in partnerships with industry where we are getting in core industry curriculum, cutting edge areas like Web 3.0, AI, and so on. There's not as much academic content. There's not as much academic expertise which has been developed. Most of it has been developed on the other side of the pond. So we're bringing experts in to start contributing to learners and to start bringing their experience to the curriculum. And that's a virtuous cycle that we believe is very important to fill. So I don't know about the statistics, but I think the direction of travel for us is extremely positive. And what we're seeing in both management and technology today is a very happy confluence.
Fantastic, Anish. I was talking to a CEO of a large edtech listed company globally, and I was asking which are the courses that are getting the most offtake. And about 20 months back, he told me that at that time the course was on communication, leadership. So not, and I said, what about ML, AI? They were 6th, 7th. They were not necessarily, but people were opting for courses like communication, which is so basic, seems basic. I mean, there is a business communication course in every B school, right? So give us a sense of what are the courses. Web 3, I'm sure all of you know. Internet is Web 1, social media was Web 2, and blockchain and related technologies are all Web 3 in a very simplistic way. We live in the era of chat GPT. A lot of universities had to yesterday in India and abroad say that you will not be able to use chat GPT for doing your exams. And I only learned about chat GPT on 15 December. Both my children were speaking at a TED talk. My daughter studying in the US. She said, Papa, you can prepare my speech. So I asked one of my senior colleagues, can you prepare it for Pratna? And then my son also said, Prasan, that, and I was preparing it and I met 2 young mentees of mine, both run very large companies. One raised $183 million last year. And Vaibhav told me, you don't have to, you can just So he showed me in 20 seconds. So what I'm trying to ask you is, while technology is the flavor of the day, what are the courses beyond technology that are being picked up, and what are the courses you see in future that will have even more traction than they have today?
So that's a great question. And on the topic of Chat GPT, I think that there was an article yesterday in the Times of India about a Harvard professor who gave an essay writing competition, and the best essay was written by Chat GPT, and they discovered it was plagiarized by accident. But the response of the professor was very interesting. Instead of saying, I'm going to ban Chat GPT, he said, you will write the first draft by hand without any browser in the classroom. Post that, we will do a Chat GPT session and we'll critique the Chat GPT version. So that was a very interesting response to how to coexist with technology. And I think across higher education, that's a challenge, right? How do you coexist with technology? To your question on courses, we have been seeing, of course, a massive uptake on the technology-related courses. Also on these convergent courses, management technology. How do you, as a general manager, appreciate the application of various changing technologies like AI? The first book on AI was written by, I think, an Indian professor in a Canadian university, and he called AI as a prediction machine. And prediction machine is what all management is about. At the end of the day, if you're able to create a more predictable business, that's management for you.
Absolutely. But the thing about Chat GPT is, or any artificial intelligence, machine learning, is they look at past. So anything new that needs to be created will not create it. So human beings are not. So if you have art, you have anything which is a new hypothesis, Chat GPT cannot predict that.
Thus far as a 2021, I mean, it's dated 2021, but I'm sure it'll get better.
Yeah.
It's got
now, one of the universities that I want to go and study, at least I wanted to till 2 years back, was the Singularity University. And for those, I'm sure all of you understand what is singularity. Just to put it in context, a singularity is when machines will mimic human behavior exactly in lots of areas. It can't be 100%. It may happen before 2034. And I know a friend of mine who's no longer, he's in heaven now. He passed away last year. Pradeep Guha, who went 3 years back, or 4 years, 3.5. He called me and he said, Annurag, you should go to Singularity University and do a course. So now, Singularity University in some way is very relevant to what TimesPro does. The kind of courses, the kind of resource faculty they bring, adjunct, whatever you want to call it. How do you develop your content? How do you make sure that the content is differentiated and ahead of everybody else? Because your space is a very competitive, dare I say, cluttered space. So how do you differentiate?
So a lot of the content teams that we build are people with dual expertise. People who have worked in academia and people who also, the same people who have also worked in industry. So especially when you look at Web 3.0, when you look at the kind of content required for Web 3.0, much of it is seminal. Much of it is being created for the first time. And it is being created out of the expertise of someone who has actually worked in that space. Similarly, even for our management programs, our early employability programs, the kind of content building teams we have are people with industry experience who are actually coming in and adding that flavor of, hey, this is what this young man or woman is going to face on the first day of his or her job. And that's what is required as a differentiating tool. You spoke about communication and you spoke about confidence. We deal with kids who are fresh out of college, graduate college, who can barely conduct themselves in an interview, who can barely, speak the first few lines. There is a lack of confidence there. There is a lack of, self-respect that they have. So we solve for a lot of these problems by creating an environment where they could actually become a better version of themselves, where they could, besides just the skill, they also pick up the will, which they can display to their employers, which they can display in an interview situation. And I think it's very, very important, especially when we look at an early career situation. It's very important that content creators, curriculum creators, take cognizance of who they are teaching and the situation in which they are creating those learning models. So that situational leadership comes from practitioners because they understand, what is a young man or a woman going to face on the first day of the job. And I think
Absolutely, I totally agree. Anish, let me also ask you, till 18 months, we were saying the future of higher education tech and Edtech is hybrid. The future of colleges, whether it be school or other higher, is hybrid. But we fully come back. I mean, we can do a virtual event and our margins would be much high. To be honest, our margins in COVID were much high because there was no cost. It was 10% cost, the MC of the technology. But we still choose to do because, Gaurav's been telling me about you, but I met you for the first time and I feel comfortable, right? So, is hybrid the future or we'll be back to a fully face-to-face learning, or it is different courses for different horses? What is it?
I think that's the holy grail question, right? I mean, fundamentally, I think there is a massive space for the whole online movement to occupy. And that space is in solving the problems that the physical world cannot solve for. So today, if the NEP is talking about taking gross enrollment ratio in Indian higher education from 27% to 50%, that cannot be solved by physical infrastructure. You cannot build the number of classrooms that it will take to move our numerator from 27 to 50 or even 35 because the denominator is
or
so
60
high.
plus as NEP envisages.
Yeah, 50 is the 2030 target. 50% will require us to create a few million more seats across our
It's
physical
not an either or
infrastructure.
question.
So to me,
It's an and.
to me, the role of online is to solve the problems that we cannot solve through physical infrastructure. The role of physical infrastructure is to create those areas of excellence, which can only happen in a face-to-face interaction, which can only happen when you have strong professors interacting with each other in a highly charged academic environment. But then we have too few of those islands of excellence. We have too few of those faculty. We need to adopt that one-to-many approach to bring up that level of Indian humanity to a level where they can aspire or their kids can aspire to come to the islands of excellence that we have.
Okay. My last question before I bring in one or two questions. If you had to look ahead, Anish, 12 to 18 months, and I won't say 36 to 60 months as I used to, because I think the looking ahead is difficult in a very long-term scenario, given the last 36 months. What are your predictions? If, okay, you don't want to call them predictions. What are the trends, and especially the courses that you see will be seeing more offtake than others, and why?
So at an aggregate volume level, I believe that the entire undergraduate denominator is going to shift online. And there's a very strong reason for it. When you look at the penetration of degree programs, and if you look at the dropout rates after class 12, we have amongst the world's highest. So if online degrees in the undergraduate space are going to become affordable and accessible, you're going to see the grocer's son, the farmer's daughter being able to work during the day and pick up these courses during the evening or the weekend. And I think that will be a huge game changer. I think the government's move to say, hey, we are not going to differentiate on the degree between who's taking it online and who's taking it offline will be a game changer. However, I think one of the big challenges of that approach is quality. You can build quantity, but you got to also look for quality within that quantity. Employers have to become part of this grand bargain. Industry has to become part of it. Edtech has to become part of it. How do you take the quintessential degree, which is available online, either through the old distance mode or now through the online mode? How do you make products of that degree employable, and how do you give hard outcomes to the learner? I think those are the big trend lines that we've all got to look for. I think in postgraduate and in working professional education, we have seen massive clutter, like you rightly said. There's hyper competitivity. Within those, environments, TimesPro has done well. I think the big challenge for EdTech today is to look at, the last mile, look at the next layer of the pyramid, and look at how you can make big differences to their lives. And I think that's where EdTech really is headed.
Beautiful, Anish. Give Mr. Anish Srikrishna a big round of applause. He is authentic and, he talks from a position of having done that and trying to create something for the future. If you have one or two questions, we can take that. We can take one.
They can probably hear you. Yeah.
I'm Sanjay from ICFI Business School, Hyderabad. My question is, how relevant will degrees be in the case when certifications are a rage and companies like Google are accepting people who just have a certificate?
I think that's a great question, and honestly, I don't think that's the point of it. The point of it is who is making a young person employable. Are you doing it through a degree or a certificate or a diploma is not the material question. Are you making that person aware of what's ahead for him or her? Are you making that person equipped with the skill and the will to be able to both enter and survive in a work environment which is becoming such a hyper VUCA place? Those are really the issues. I really wouldn't bother too much as an employer or as an educator whether it's a Google certificate or it's a degree, and frankly it doesn't matter. The degree is a moniker for employability, which for a while it has served its purpose. If it becomes a very massified online product, it may outlive its usefulness, but that's not the point. I think the point I made was the job of the ecosystem, industry, academia, EdTech, is in actually equipping the skill and the will, whether through a certificate or a diploma. To me, it doesn't make a difference.
We'll take one more question if there's. Sudhakar Rao still want to ask one?
Good morning. My name is Sudhakar Rao. I'm from ICFI, and I have an observation, not a question, basically. I agree with you that the pivotal role that EdTech can play will go towards probably solving some of the problems that the offline could not have solved. It is the emergence of technology in any domain, not just education or academics. Technology gets into any domain and makes it a little better. But having said that, I think we have of late over-romanticized the impact of technology in education and over-defined that it is the EdTech that is going to define the shape of academics in the days to come. So that's not going to happen. At best, it will be at 70-30, 70 offline, 30 online in terms of the hybrid. But otherwise, again, sir, it is interesting to hear that the daughter of a farmer will be able to take that course from the farm field or wherever it is. I cannot host a webinar sitting in Delhi using my data uninterrupted. There are issues. Of course, that's a different issue altogether in terms of infrastructure, you may say. But these are over-romanticized. I think we need to understand people who stand in front of the students and teach, they will be able to tell better why offline is the most sought after now and why students are coming back to the classroom and why teachers are going back to the classroom. But in the overall basket, I think professional education at executive level, at a segment where students cannot be present, they're doing something else. I think that segment will be solved much better through these online programs. That's my take.
Fair point.
Thank you.
I can respond. I don't think I can disagree with anything that you said, except for adding that number one, a little bit of romance is useful. We tend to over institutionalize everything we do, and perhaps a little bit of romance is required to be able to think outside the box. Second, sir, I think with all due respect, what we have solved for with the physical infrastructure has only touched 27% of our young people, right? The solution for the rest of the population is not yet to be found in those physical infrastructure. If it were to be found, I would be the first one to advocate it. But I do not see that because there are too few islands of excellence, right? We could accommodate them all, within a very large version of this hall. And that shortage of faculty is not new, and it's been there since Clayton Christensen wrote his book in 2008, right? Disrupting the Classroom came out in 2008, and it's an American problem, it's an Indian problem, it's a global problem. We have too few great quality faculty that can solve for the education challenges of the globe.
And if I may add, I'm not an expert in education. Dr. Singh is there, Dr. Mitra is there, you are here, Dr. Chitkara is here. I just want to say India is in every category, especially education, is an and. It's not either or.
It's not either or, it's and.
There is a need in various segments which is unfulfilled. So I think for the foreseeable future, 5-10 years, there is a need to get to numbers and build more democratization. Second is B schools. All B schools do a EDP, MDP, whatever you want to call. By the way, we're launching our ranking of EDP courses of all schools, all offerings. We're also launching our ranking of India's most digital ready universities. So I think it is not a substitute for that. I think the segment is different. That's my understanding. One, it's an and, it's not an either or, because of the numbers that he talked at. In India, you take any segment, take a mobile phone. There's an 8,000 rupee phone that sells, and there is a 2 lakh rupee phone that sells. So in India, both from a need and from a price point standpoint, and I'm assuming that everything has something to offer. There is something in it, whether it's certification, whether it's learning, whether it's upskilling. So I think there is a space for players. By the way, the latest issue of BW Education is about EduTech. We have Ronnie, Fagun and Mayank on the cover. All three have given interview to Mehaji, Ms. Meha Mathur and Vasudha Arya. So you may want to read it and what they believe. They've also acquired companies in the kind of higher ed space because they were weak there. So clearly they see opportunity there. So it's a collaborative way forward. With this, give Mr. Anish Srikrishna a big round of applause. We have caught up by 15-20 minutes, and I will curtail 15 minutes from the lunch break. So I think we'll be back on time. Thank you.